go.
All right, Aiden and Story, I love you. We're in Yosemite, and I'm out with guests that have this cool camera that apparently gets like a 3D visual on it that we're going to be able to check out on our Quest 2. Crazy, right? Woo! Behind this tree right here. We can go across the tree if you guys want a closer look. And then right here is 3 pinnacles.
Oh, 3 pinnacles, yeah. It's like you're living in the picture, you know?
Right? Yeah. It's almost like too much to take in. Like a better shot of it. This is it right here. And then from tunnel view, this was the one on the far right. So you can see the heart a little bit closer.
Yeah.
On the far right, before it slopes down, you can see one tiny little pine cone or pine tree, right? That's actually a full-size tree, by the way. But just underneath it and to the right is actually the waterfall, which you can barely even see right now. And that's Horsetail Falls. That is where the firefall is essentially going to happen. So that one little ribbon of light is going to come through and hit right there, and we're going to be on the other side of it and kind of get to see it. Okay.
Oh shoot! We're going to experience this.
If you see, it looks like almost like fresh clay, like a huge sliver that kind of follows the angle of the mountain. That was a rockfall that happened 3 years ago, and it was 30 cubic tons of rock that fell. It killed one climber who was underneath there. And then one guy that was driving on North Side Drive, so the other road that leads out of here, a rock the size of my fist came bouncing down the road, went through his driver's side window and hit him in the head. He was helicoptered out. Yeah, like crazy, right? He was helicoptered out. He had lived. He was fine. But yeah, just kind of crazy that would happen.
Oh my God.
Person, about 3 to 5 days. Now, not really a good comparison because the average person is carrying something like a bag that weighs almost 100 pounds.
Yeah.
They've got water, food, portaledge for where they sleep at night on the wall. You know, and so he didn't have any of that, so he can just climb and focus on that. whereas they are hauling stuff up after him. So it's not a good comparison, but still, you know, just to give you a sense of the scale of what he did.
Exactly.
You know, it's crazy. Identify it is if you can roll it between your fingers, and it looks like this bract kind of design here. That's a giant sequoia, and I'll show you an Incense-Cedar. You see how it also has bracts, kind of like that one, but it looks like somebody pressed it in a book, right?
Right.
So if you take a piece of it and you try to roll it between your fingers, it won't roll because it's flat, whereas that's more. So this is Incense-Cedar.
Incense-Cedar.
That is a giant sequoia. Pretty cool, right? And you'll see a lot of the areas of the rock where there's black and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's where water typically is. And that
Did it dry out or?
Well, the water dried up. You can, maybe some of it's still kind of black because of the water coming like just trickling down. But also you have lichen that are growing on the rock because it does have water for parts of the year, so it's able to feed off of that. Coming out of the ground, and it kind of, use your imagination, looks like jaws coming out of the ground, about ready to bite down, right? So Ahwahnee is a place of the gaping mouth. Now, the Native American people who lived mostly in the valley, they would travel, you know, during different times of the season. But when they were mostly in the valley, they were called the Ahwahnee, and that is people of the gaping mouth. You can see the very first stone that was laid for this building. The stamp for the date.
Oh,
1926. So we are 6 years away from this thing being 100 years old. This might be because I grew up in LA. Architecturally, were always like things that were like the railroad stations, right?
Yeah.
But this always reminds me of like the railroad station here, like this old wooden, like.
Oh yeah. It reminds me of the, you know, the ones that like in Disneyland. This is The Shining.
So they actually use this as a base for the movie.
Are you serious?
For the actual hotel there. Yeah, it's in, right? Yeah. It's cool. Look at like the.
Yeah. Oh, it's pretty.
It's such like a subtle touch, but it's like absolutely amazing.
No, it's cool.
The original rugs that they put in here were flown in from all over the world, from royal families, from castles all over. Basket so tight that it would hold water.
Oh wow.
Pretty impressive. They also used to use these to fashion backpacks to hold their children.
Not the same thing. When I was a kid, I had one of those from Frontierland in Disneyland. Yeah. I used to buy those. Yeah, that's the real deal. Yeah. It's cool. And those are real arrows too?
Old mural here on the wall. I've never seen a fireplace like this in the corner. That's super cool.
Who made that? Glacier Point?
No.
I guess that's what it
It's
is.
the very top of that mountain. And if you look at the very highest point, just to the right of it, you'll see what looks like a tree going up.
Yeah.
It's like solid. It's actually a pointed rock that goes out.
Really?
There's been a lot of people throughout history that have taken pictures standing on that rock and stuff. It's technically illegal now, but people still do it. But that's exactly where Glacier Point is. So if you guys come back in the summer and go to Glacier Point, you'll be like, "Dang, what's down horse riding that you could like rent and go
Yeah.
riding a horse through nature, which is really cool. But they it's really difficult to keep a business going like that because the insurance is really high. People get injured all the time. So most of them they shut down inside of Yosemite. That is all the way to the end. Not the Queen Sea, like right next to it. And the view is just, first of all, like floor to ceiling windows, right? Absolutely. Great for taking in the view. Butterfly the wood. Firefall go, and then you push the fire over the edge. And because it was nighttime, you'd have to use a slow shutter speed. And so all the fire embers, as they came down, would look like a flowing fire. Now, what we're going to see today is actually real water
The
that
real.
looks like fire. This was actual fire coming down the hill.
That sounded kind of illegal.
These trees are rich with tannic acid, so when a fire comes through, just the same way, because tannic acid is heavily it has a lot of water in it, basically.
Yeah.
So as that evaporates, the process of evaporation takes a lot of energy, right? So the same way sweat on your skin cools you off when it evaporates off, when the fire comes close to these trees and it evaporates that tannic acid out of there, it's cooling the tree in the same process. So they can handle decent fires, healthy fires. They also, their seeds, first of all, their cones are one of the smallest cones in the whole, tree kingdom or whatever. And then the seed comes from that cone, and that seed is usually the size of like a flake of granola, like super tiny, right? Now that seed essentially doesn't have enough nutrients in it to last very long. It'll usually die after a day or two. So it needs the ground to be cleared through fire. So fire will come through, it'll burn up all the brush on the ground, because like right here, if a seed were to fall, would it hit bare soil?
No.
No, right? So it would die. So a fire would come through here, it would clean all this up. It would take all the nutrients trapped in all this dead matter and release it immediately into the soil as ash. Ash is very carbon and nitrogen rich. So that goes directly into the soil, and at that point the soil is very fertile, so that seed in the cone up in the tree from the radiant heat kind of dries out, so it cracks open. The seeds start falling out in the next couple weeks. They hit the bare, fertile surface of the soil, and they start to sprout up and germinate. So these trees need fire in order to germinate. Stuff down, right? Each one, as it grows, just like we shed cells in our skin, this sheds cells as well. So it sheds cells on the outside, which becomes bark, and it sheds cells on the inside, which becomes the dead wood. Now, in the summer and spring, the growth is a lot because it has a lot of water and it has a lot of sunshine, right? So the growth is rapid, so the dead cells separate, so the color becomes lighter. In the wintertime, there's not as much growth, so the dead cells that it's shedding are compressed, so it makes the shade darker, right? So when you look at this, you have a dark layer here and a light layer here. So essentially what you're counting is summer, winter, which equals 1 year. So if you count each dark ring, you're counting each winter. If you count each light ring, you're counting each summer. But essentially, if you count all of them, you'll have an exact detail of how long that tree's been alive, how many years. What's really cool is sometimes you'll see a dark ring on there, and that was when a fire happened, and it actually charred that layer of the tree. And so when they go through a tree, or when they go through a forest and they'll take a bunch of samples, if they see all of them in the same area, they can count backwards and tell if a big fire came through, like what year it was, and how devastating it was as well, which is really cool. Super interesting. Great question, dude.
Yeah, that's the tree life.
Popping up blood
Right,
and stuff
right,
like
yeah.
that. So he was dying of that, and a long time ago in his past, he had come up to Yosemite and fallen in love with it, but had never really gotten back out here. So at the age of, I think, 40, he came up here to die.
Oh.
And he came up here, he dug his own grave,
Really?
and kind of just waited for death to come and take him away. But he thinks that the mountain air actually healed him, which I feel like with tuberculosis, if you start getting clean air, like it'll actually help the condition get better. You're the doctor, I'm not, so for sure. But that's what happened.
So he got basically
he got
healed?
better.
Really?
Got
He
TB.
dug that grave at 40 and didn't get into that grave until
Oh,
he was
good.
in his 90s.
Whoa.
So 50 more years of life for coming up here.
Wow.
He became
Good for him.
the first Yosemite National Park superintendent while he was up here. And
Nice.
so he was charged with taking care of this park. He did a lot of good things for the park. And one of the things he did when he dug his grave in about 1900 or so was he planted 4 giant sequoia seeds on each corner of his grave. Let's go check it out.
Oh.
Alright, so this is kind of a small one, but this is a giant sequoia cone right here. They get to about egg size. Alright. This one's not really letting anything go. So these bracts crack open, and inside there is where you'll actually find
Like a seed?
the seeds. Okay, this one's not going to give me any.
Yeah.
You guys see another one?
Yeah.
You can try again. You can see what an actual giant sequoia seed looks like.
Sequoia seed.
That's right.
So this is Galen Clark's grave. The
So did he really end up like being buried here?
yeah, he actually is here.
Oh my gosh. that's cool.
One of the coolest and funniest things I think, which I think he would love, and maybe might have been why he did it.
Yeah.
In 1,000 to 2,000 years from now, when these trees grow to their full size, they will completely envelop that stone. And if humans are even still around, nobody might even ever know that he was here. He will have been enveloped by nature entirely.
Oh
Wow.
my god, how cool is
But-
that?
He's one with nature.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy, huh?
Yeah.
But these are the 4 sequoia trees that he planted. Here's a new one growing up.
Oh,
And then, yeah, pretty crazy, huh?
that's cool.
Still looking for another cone here.
That's the way.
Well, this is kind of cool because we know that these trees are basically about 100 years old, just over 100 years old. So,
But this one is your youngin.
yeah.
The one in the middle.
Well, I think this one's young. But all 4 of these were planted at the same time. Interesting that this one is so much smaller than these other 2, you know,
Right.
like were these other 2 out competing it as far as water and resources for some
yeah,
reason?
probably
Like-
he got all the protein, this one.
Yeah, this one, he got all the gains. He hits the gym every day.